Wow, sounds intriguing. And so you're like, I'm here to tell stories, but I'm here to tell you real life stories.
Black maternal health is in a crisis here in the United States. It literally is considered a health crisis. It was Mother's Day. My whole life, I have sort of watched my mom struggle with that loss. Their great great grandmother Tabitha had written all these years ago. They never knew these letters existed. He has made a decision that he wants to rebuild this relationship with his first love. But she is so very injured from what happened between them 10 years ago. He doesn't even know where she is. She has completely disappeared.
This is the Christian Readers Community Podcast.
A quiet whisper in the night so near, stories of faith that draw you here. The words unfold like morning's glow, a place of truth where hearts will grow. A gentle breeze that turns the page, wisdom passed through every age. Come gather around and take your seat, the Christian Reader's Tales complete.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Christian Readers Community Podcast. My name is Faith Ichiga, and I'm so excited to be back with this multiple Christy Award winning author. Welcome to the show, Rhonda McKnight.
Hello, Faith.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you, and because, back to back, I've really been a huge fan of your work. The first time I discovered you was when I was going through the Christy Award website. That was back in 2024. And I saw this book title and it was sounding very interesting. Said The Thing About Home by Rhonda McKnight. And I was like, oh, The Thing About Home? Then I'm going to check this out. And I did. And I absolutely loved it. So I'm so happy that fast forward almost 2 years later, we are having this interview. So you're welcome once again.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad that you are able to find the thing about home on the Christie website. I think that website has given the book a good amount of publicity.
Yeah, it's very, very beautiful publicity for the book. And, that award was well deserved. Everyone who reads that book will definitely agree with me that it was a very beautiful read. And you published another book, 2025, which also received another award, right?
Right. And 2023, the thing about home was finaled for the Christie Award. It actually won another award here in the U.S. called the Emma Award for Best Contemporary Romance, which was exciting for me because it's a secular award contest. And so for the thing about home to rise to the top among all those books as a Christian romance and win was very exciting. But then in 2024, so it finaled for the Christie in 2023. Then in 2024, Bitter and Sweet came out, and last year it finaled for the Christie Award in the category of general fiction, not romance, because this book has a lot less romance. And so then it won the Amplified Christy, which shocked me.
It has a lot.
I was very shocked.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I've just not been able to read Bittersweet, and I will definitely be going through. So, but before we dive into your beautiful book, by the way, I love the story description, of that one. So, just tell us about yourself for those who are meeting you for the first time. Because
Okay.
I follow you on Facebook.
All right. So I live in South Carolina in the U.S. and it is but I'm originally from the Northeast. So even though I'm currently writing Southern women's fiction with strong romance stories, I'm originally a Northeastern girl. I'm not an original Southern girl. But you may know, I'm sure you have something very similar. Um, your family home is always where your people originated from, where your ancestors are from. And so my
Yeah.
whole life as a child, when in the summers we traveled to South Carolina, that's where my father's parents lived. And so for Independence Day every year, we would travel for that week for like a family reunion. And so I would come down. At the time I'm going back to when I was 11 years old, or before I was 11 years old, my grandfather, who passed away at 100 when I was 11, I had 33 first cousins, and that was a lot. First cousins. And so I loved coming because everybody, as much as possible, all of our relatives came. And so the things that came out of that experience, and even coming after my grandparents passed away, I basically grew up enmeshed in Southern culture, in the food, and sort of the Southern accent, the ways of the people, even though we lived in the Northeast. And so I moved to Atlanta, probably, I think maybe 25 years ago, and decided that I wanted to take my writing seriously, but I really didn't know like how to get started. So I joined a romance writing group, took some writing like workshops with that group, really kind of struggled with what I would write, because at the time there were very, very few Black authors who were published in Christian publishing. There were two. And that felt daunting. It felt like there was no place for us on the shelf. And so I didn't, when you don't have a vision of where you could be, sometimes it feels like you can't get there. So I was still struggling with what I was going to write. I was largely writing secular stories, but not moving forward on them. And one day I had a conversation with the Lord in prayer. And that was back in 2000, and it was New Year's Eve, crossing over into 2003. And I prayed about my writing and what I would write. And in the conversation with the Lord, in the end, I realized that I really wanted to write Christian fiction, and I had to trust that. I had to trust the gift that it would find its place in the world, even though there were real limitations for Black authors in Christian publishing. So I left that writing group where, again, everybody was mostly writing secular books, because I felt like that was not helping me to stay true to what I wanted to do. And fortunately, the Lord knit my heart together with with 9 other women who were writing Christian fiction. And it was so exciting because they were really serious authors. And out of that group, 5 of us had become published. Sherry Lewis, Tia McCullers, Miranda Parker, just a really, really hardworking group who were able to get our books out there. And so my first book came out in 2009. I finished it in 2007. Sold it that same year that I finished it, after making a declaration into the atmosphere that this was the year I was going to sell my book. God was faithful for me to get a book contract on the very last day of that year. And it came out 2 years later in 2009. The title was Secrets and Lies. And it was with a publisher who was actually a secular publisher, but they were publishing Christian fiction, Black Christian fiction books. And so it was just sort of like this breakthrough in the industry that gave us an opportunity to have our books published when traditional publishers were not publishing. Traditional Christian publishers were still not publishing our work. There were very few authors at the time. So I was really excited about that. My first 3 books came out. And then the publisher decided that they didn't want to be in that business anymore, and that it was kind of over for them. And I thought, okay, well, that was cool. Being a writer was fun, but I've got other things I can do. I decided that was like a milestone I had accomplished in my life. And I decided to move on from that. And then Sherry Lewis, my dear friend, who was also a writer, told me I couldn't stop writing. She says, "You're a great writer. You can't stop writing." Now, mind you, she was my favorite author, but she had stopped writing to go become a missionary in Cameroon. But she told me I couldn't stop writing. So she said, "Write one more thing. Write something fun that just sort of, the kind of book you would want to read." And I wrote a romance called Breaking All the Rules. I self-published it, and with a lot of because my novels that I had been writing had been sort of heavier stories about couples in crisis and their marriages. And so this light little romance felt like something my current readers may not have wanted. And that book sold and sold and sold. It sold so well that I realized that I had a new home as a self-published author. So I probably went way tell me about yourself, but now I'm really talking, right? You may have just wanted to know. You may have just wanted to know, oh, I'm a mom with 2 sons, and now I've told you like half my writing life story.
Yeah, sure. You feel free. Go on. We just want to know more and more and more
Okay.
about.
Okay, so I'll tell you how I got to where I am now with the Thomas Nelson book. Or the book that you read. So what happened was
Okay. So I'm going to get, yeah, I'm going to get to that one then.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, because you were saying something about you being a mom. So I was like, okay, if you have more personal stories you'd like to share about yourself.
Not particularly. I mean, I have 2 sons. I am, it's interesting. My first novel, Secrets and Lies, I was married at the time that I wrote that book. And by the time I finished that book, my marriage had fallen apart. And so here I had this book about this couple it was a story about a couple whose marriage was in trouble. And by the end of the book, the Lord had worked a miracle in their lives, and their marriage was sustained. And that was not happening for me. And so when my first novel came out, it was a really sort of a pivotal time in my life. I had, a 5-year-old, and my husband and I were not going to remain married. My older son was 16. And so, well, no, he was older than that. If Michael was 5, maybe Michael was 4. Yeah, Michael was 4. And Aaron was about to graduate from high school. But I felt like I'd had this, with finally being published, like I did have something, even though I was going through something hard, I had come into something new. And so here I am now, I don't know, 15, 16 years, almost 17 years later, I've managed to stay published and to have, I think, my 27th novel comes out in September of this year.
Wow, that's huge. Really, that's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. So, as an author, I marvel at how, authors are able to publish more than, 1, 2, 3 books in a year. In a year. And I'm like, how do you do it?
Yeah. I think that the trick is to get over the first one.
Yes.
To have faith and do the work and get past the first one. And sometimes once you finish writing a book, I think that it gives you the confidence to believe that you can write another one. And so, and then you have to have the confidence to put your work out in the world in whatever way you choose to do that, whether you're going to be self-published or you're going to seek out a traditional publisher. I've been fortunate now to have my second deal with one of the largest traditional publishers in the world. And that started with The Thing About Home, and and Bitter and Sweet, and now this upcoming novel will be my third book with them, and I'm writing the fourth. But I self-published for a long time in there between 2012 and 2022. I self-published a lot of books, because I think the thing that gives you the confidence, I think, is readers. Once readers sort of latch on and start enjoying your work and asking for more, it gives you the confidence to believe, I can do this again and again and again. And that's how you get to 27. That's how you get to 50. That's how people get to 100, because they not only believe in their gift, but the readers believe in their gift and they ask for it.
Wow. So let's go back to the days you were writing secular fiction. How many did you write and publish before you pivoted?
Okay, well, I actually never finished anything secular. I would start stories and I would get to like chapter 3, 4, or 5, and then I would start another one, and then I would throw that away, and then I'd start another one. I never finished anything. My first novel that I finished was my first Christian fiction novel. When I finally made the decision in 2004 to lean into my gift, the gift that God gave me, and write Christian fiction, I never looked back, and because I was never successful with it. It wasn't where I was supposed to be.
Yeah, it wasn't where you were supposed to be, because the Lord was coming for you hard. And now you're a multiple Christy Award winner. That's correct, right?
I've won one Christy. I've finaled twice.
Oh,
yeah.
Twice.
And
Okay.
finaling is a big deal to me.
Yeah.
Finaling is a big deal to me. I never, I've been nominated for so many awards over the years, so many. And I'm always just excited to be nominated. I never expect to win anything. Finaling is always good enough for me. So when I win, I'm like, oh, wow, I won, because if you can make it to the end and final or be nominated, it already means a lot. There can only be one winner. So I think that while some people may be disappointed if they don't win, for me, finaling is always an acknowledgement of my work that's enough. And so when I win, it's like more than enough.
More than enough. I'd like to ask you some questions, before we could get into your latest novel. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions, because over here in Nigeria, you and I were talking before the recording started, and you were asking questions about how we get to access books and read. So we have bookstores here, but for someone like me who is visually impaired, we have to read ebooks, and getting those ones are a bit more difficult than just going to a bookstore or a physical library to access, or to pick a book, pay for it, or borrow and return after reading. Now, you said something about Black Christian writers. So over here we have lots of American fiction, Christian fiction written by Americans, but we hardly see the ones written by Black Americans.
Right.
Yes. So I don't think I've ever read a book written by a Black Christian author prior to visiting the Christy Award website back in 2024. Yes, that was when I discovered your book, discovered The American Queen by Vanessa Miller. Yes. So, and I discovered how much I enjoyed reading your book, enjoyed reading The American Queen, that I had to go and intentionally look for other African American authors, and I loved, I discovered other authors like Tiffany L. Warren, and Yeah, Christopher.
Tony Shiloh. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, and oh my, I'm trying to remember this author. And she has Christopher in the middle of her name, Christopher Murray.
Victoria
Oh,
Christopher Murray. My
yeah.
mentor.
So
Yeah, Victoria.
yes, I've read her books, and these are all wonderful books. So starting out on your own, how challenging was it for you as a black author, a black Christian author? Because I've seen books written by black secular authors, but it was really difficult until 2024 when I discovered your book. So how
Yeah,
was it like?
yeah.
Did you have
And that's always disappointing to hear. But the reason that you don't see us is because so few of us ever have an opportunity to be published and have widespread distribution. Christian publishing, for a very long time, and I actually spoke about this during my acceptance speech at the Christy Award ceremony because I decided I'm going to just say what I want to say. And of course, I said what I wanted to say in love. But years ago, I did not feel like I could be published as a Black author because the Christian publishing would not publish us. They would not give us a place in bookstores. They would not accept our manuscripts. It was like our stories weren't good enough, and there was no focus on our work, and we felt intentionally shut out. It's like I told you, that original publisher that published our books, that was actually a secular publisher who decided to publish Christian books. We were a very small little piece of his business because he thought, well, oh, the Christian market must be good because most Black people are Christians, right? So that means if I get some Black Christian fiction in here, it'll do well. Well, some of the mistakes he made was that, and I'm not saying he made mistakes, let me not say that. What happened is he published a lot of secular books, and I think that largely his business model fit attracting secular readers. And so there wasn't really like a business funnel set up for us. Like, he published our books and he put us in major stores, but there wasn't like a specific marketing plan developed to attract Black Christian readers. And not that we only want to be read by Black readers, we want to be read by everybody because I think my stories are universal. But I think when you think about who your primary audience is as a writer, you're marketing into certain buckets, right? And so the first bucket is always going to be who's the most likely person to want your book. And unfortunately, in the US, that most likely person is going to be someone of the same race as you, then someone of the same faith as you, then somebody who lives in the same area. Like, I write Southern fiction, so a lot of Southern readers like to read my books. Southern fiction, and so you have those dynamics, right? And so so he did not have the thought process around those buckets, right? It was just like, oh, I'm going to put these books out and let the writers find their readers. And we did the best we could with that, but it was a struggle. So then he eventually dissolved the imprint. So even though it was a secular publisher, we were Christian fiction writers writing for him, and doing really well with those books. And so those books really helped me sort of to launch my career. And so when that went away, I decided, like I said, to self-publish a book called Breaking All the Rules. And then I self-published another, Unbreak My Heart, and then I give a little love. And I started doing these series. I did a series of 3 books called the Restoration series, which is one of my favorite romance series out of all of my series. It's a deeply spiritual series about 2 people who lost each other in high school due to some trauma. And years later, he has made a decision that he wants to rebuild this relationship with his first love. But she is so very injured from what happened between them 10 years ago that it's very difficult. He doesn't even know where she is. She has completely disappeared. She's not on social media. She does not contact her family. What happened between them was very injurious. And so God restored their relationship. And I wrote 3 books about them: The Winter Reunion, The Winter Wedding, and The Winter Baby. And so I enjoyed writing those stories. But then, so I think that we've always been out here writing and trying to get our books out, self-publishing. A lot of authors, readers have found us in like on Amazon as self-published authors. I used to take my books to events and sell them in person at churches, and people would buy them. And so we did not have mass distribution. And a lot of people still don't. When I think about my imprint, you mentioned Vanessa Miller. Vanessa Miller and I are very good friends. We have been for like 15 years. We're both published with Thomas Nelson, which is a part of HarperCollins, which is one of the biggest publishers in the world. But we're the only 2 Black authors out of the many authors that are on that imprint. And we're glad to be there, and they are good to us, and we're getting our books out, but we're 2, right? And so then you have, Toni Shiloh, who I hope you've read some of Toni Shiloh's books. Her books are amazing. She's over there with Baker Books. And she's like the only one, and so we're small in number, but I believe that as the few of us that are able to write and get our books out, and people begin to enjoy them, that it just opens the door for more to come through, and not just Black writers, Latino writers, Asian writers, Native American writers, because there are other minority writers that would like to have their stories told also.
Someone has recommended Toni Shiloh lots of times. I've seen lots of reviews about her book, but I have her book on my TBR for years now, but I've not been able to start reading. But I've read your book. I've read Vanessa Miller. I've read all Vanessa's books. All, that was just how much I enjoyed her books.
She's a powerhouse.
Yeah. And I don't know if she has anyone coming out this year, because
she does.
Can't wait.
She's one coming out in August.
Because I enjoyed the historical fiction she published last year. So and I've read yours, and I think I'm going to, now that you've endorsed Toni Shiloh, I would definitely love to read her book. And that takes me to Bittersweet. It's also on my TBR, and I'm going to be reading that next. I'm just sad that I didn't get to read that one before this interview. So tell us about this book that made the Christy Award finals last year.
So Bitter and Sweet is really truly the story of my heart. It is, once I finished The Thing About Home, I had a 2-book contract with my publisher, and I had to come up with another idea for a story. But the funny thing is, and we may get back to this if you want me to share my inspiration for The Thing About Home, I didn't really have another idea in the women's fiction space. The Thing About Home was like a one-off idea that I had, and so then I had to come up with another one. So I started thinking about what I wanted to write about, and I felt like I had never written a book about 2 sisters that didn't have a good relationship. Bitter and Sweet is the story. In the story, a cryptic text message from a grandmother reunites 2 estranged sisters at the site of the family's 87-year-old restaurant, where these young women have to face complicated truths about themselves and their family history. And so Bitter and Sweet is, and of course, Bitter and Sweet, kitchen. So it has a front contemporary storyline with these two sisters. And then another half of the book is written in dual timeline. We go back to the years of 1915 to 1938, where you meet these girls' grandmother, a woman named Tabitha Cooper, Bitter for short, as she is navigating her life when she has left home the wrong way, perhaps with the wrong man. And now she finds herself alone, having to survive in Charleston, South Carolina. And the only thing she knows how to do is cook. And so you learn Tabitha's backstory. And so what begins to happen for these young women as their grandmother has summoned them home to work in this restaurant, she shares letters with them that are sort of a family, sort of a family memoriam that they didn't know existed, that their great-great-grandmother Tabitha had written all these years ago. They never knew these letters existed. So their grandmother feels like now is the time. If she does not get these two young women's hearts back together now, it may never happen. And she shares these letters with them. And what they find is they go on this journey through these letters with their great-great-grandmother. They see her heart, they see her struggles, and they learn that a lot of the issues that they're dealing with in the present are ego. So it's kind of like new day, same devil, you know? And it takes them on sort of on a journey to finding their identity, because really it's a story of two women who are really lost. They've sort of lost their way. They're both at a crossroad in their life. They're grieving a lot of things, grieving relationships, grieving careers, grieving things that have been really important to them, and grieving alone because, like I said, they don't have a relationship. And so the motivation for writing a story about two sisters was just like, okay, I want to write a book about two sisters who don't get along. I've never done that, right? So I put that note up on I have like a wall where I pin my ideas, and I pinned that wall on the idea. I knew I wanted to write it of course, in the South Carolina Lowcountry, because I have enjoyed sharing the Gullah Geechee culture and the thing about home readers. I knew readers would love it, because people always love reading about these people who were able to hold on to their African ancestry because they were isolated on these rice farms during enslavement. And so they were able to hold on to a lot of their language and their food and their, the music and their ways of worship. And so I like writing about the Gullah Geechee people because I think they're important and they're not written about enough. And so I knew I wanted to include them. I decided I wanted to set it in a restaurant because why not? Food. People love reading about my food. And so then I just needed to figure out what the issue would be between them, what was going to be the thing. And so it was Mother's Day of 2022. And I was sitting with my was it 2020? Yeah, it must have been 2022. And my mother, mother died when she was 2 years old. She died in childbirth, having a baby that she lost. And so my mother, of course, never knew her mom, because at 2, she doesn't remember her. But my whole life, I have sort of watched my mom struggle with that loss, grieve that loss. And of course, every Mother's Day, it was more prevalent. And so my mom is at the time, and that New Year, that Mother's Day of 2022, my mom would have been, 77 years old. And I remember sitting with her and seeing the pain on her face, the tears in her eyes, sort of that unspoken pain that I had always witnessed, but as I've gotten older, I've come to understand the true heaviness of that, what that grief must have been like for her. And I knew in that moment, on that day, that I had to write about this issue. Black maternal health is in a crisis here in the United States. It literally is considered a health crisis. There are a lot of Black women that die in childbirth, and in alarmingly higher numbers than white women or even Latino women. It's literally, they've called it a health crisis. And so when I hear about this in the news or, see it on social media, people talking about it and advocating for Black maternal health, I always, of course, think about the grandmother that I never knew and my mother's mother. And so I decided it's time for me to include this in a story. And what that would be like, the bitterness that would have set into the heart of that younger daughter who lost her mom. And when she lost her mom, there was a ripple effect of things that happened in her life that she essentially saw as the losses that she suffered because her sister had life. So I decided to make that the point of contention, the initial point of contention, and then the adults around them who, of course, did not behave well, made it worse. And so that's what Bitter and Sweet is about. It's a story of two women who three women really, because even including Tabitha, their great grandmother, three women who need to find their place in the world, who need healing, who want love, and each of them finding it in different ways.
Wow. We all know that Christy Award is sort of like the Grammy Award for Christians.
It is.
So for this book to actually make it to the finals would tell everyone listening to this that it's such a strong book. I read the description and I was like, wow, sounds intriguing. And so you're like, I'm here to tell stories, but I'm here to tell you real life stories.
Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about what Bitter and Sweet is about, and then I'll tell you my inspiration for writing the book, because truly it came from a very real place. And I believe that Bitter and Sweet, no matter how many books I write, will always be my favorite book. And by the time I'm finished telling you, you'll understand why. So Bitter and Sweet is the story of, in this story, a cryptic text message. A grandmother sends a text message to two of her granddaughters. And these two sisters are estranged. They have no relationship. And she reunites them at the site of, she tells them to come home. And they think that they're coming because their grandfather, who has been ill, is perhaps, more sick. But when they get there, the grandmother says, no, I don't need you. I got Grandpa, I need you girls to go reopen the family restaurant. This restaurant has been in the family for 87 years, but these two girls don't have a relationship at all. So, there's a lot going on in that kitchen that has nothing to do with cooking. But one of the things that happens there is they're forced to face complicated truths about themselves and their family history. Another thing that happens in the book is the grandmother realizes, it's sort of, in sending the text message, it was sort of now or never to get these two sisters back together who don't have a relationship. And so what she does is she gives them these letters that were written by their great-great-grandmother, Tabitha Cooper. Tabitha enters the story. She has an entire historical timeline in the book. The book is written in dual timeline. And Tabitha's story runs in the book from 1915 to 1938, where we see this young woman who has left home perhaps wrong, with the wrong man, and finds herself alone in Charleston, South Carolina, trying to survive with her children, and the only thing she knows how to do is cook. And so there are lessons in Tabitha's history that these two sisters learn 100 years in the future. And one of the things that they, first of all, learn in reading these letters from their great-great-grandmother is that a lot of the problems that they're dealing with in their present day were the same problems that their great-grandmother dealt with in the past, a sort of new day, same devil, and so she struggled with her identity. She struggled with feeling lost in the world. She struggled with grief, and largely it is a story in a lot of ways about grief and identity, and also people reconnecting and finding love. And so the inspiration for Bitter and Sweet is really important, and I always like to share it when I talk to anybody about this book because it's so deeply personal. When I decided I wanted to write my second book for Thomas Nelson, after I had finished The Thing About Home, I had to go and write my next book. And the funny thing was, I did not have an idea for another book. I had sort of was excited about The Thing About Home, and then I was like, oh, I have a 2-book contract. So I said, okay, well, I'm writing another women's fiction book. I want to write, I think I want to write a book about 2 sisters who don't get along. And so I have this board where I pin my ideas. And so I pinned an idea of 2 sisters not getting along on the board. And then I thought, okay, I knew I wanted to write about the Gullah Geechee people again, because, why not? They are Black people who, during enslavement, they worked on rice plantations in the South Carolina Lowcountry on the coast. And because of the terrain and the incredibly hot weather, the mosquitoes and malaria and different bugs there, they were sort of left alone with only very few overseers to be able to work during slavery. And so because of that, they were able to maintain their language, a lot of their culture, the food, their indigenous foods. They found foods in the U.S. that looked like the foods that they ate on the motherland. And so they were able to maintain like their art, even their way of worship. And so when those people were freed in 1865 or 1863, they were able to, since then they've been maintaining their own identity, and they don't get enough publicity in books, but people love reading about them. So I knew I wanted to continue to write about the Gullah Geechee people. I knew that I wanted to set the book in the Lowcountry. I knew I wanted to set it in a restaurant. So I had to figure out like what was going to be this issue between these 2 sisters. And I found my issue on Mother's Day of 2022. I was sitting with my own mother, and my mom at the time was 77, and Mother's Day is always a hard day for her. My mother's mother died when my mother was 2 in childbirth. And my whole life I had, of course, did not have a maternal grandmother, and knew that was a difficult, very difficult for her and her 2 siblings. But I think that, the older you get, sometimes you have to age into your own wisdom. And I was able to see how painful that loss was for my mom. I always knew it was, like I said, my whole life growing up, but sitting with a 77-year-old woman whose eyes are wet and who's still experiencing that pain and sort of that grief over never knowing her mother, in that moment, I knew this was what I had to write about. In addition to the experience that I had with my mother on that day, I also was aware through the news here in the media and through social media also that there's a health crisis in the U.S. with Black maternal health, Black women dying in childbirth. It seems like that should be crazy that that's still happening, but there's just a disproportionate number of Black women who have died in childbirth. And so learning that was getting a lot of media attention in the news made me think, of course, about my maternal grandmother and what it must have been like for her so many years ago in the 40s, and what happened to her. She was a victim of that, potentially a victim of that so many years ago. And so I knew it was time to write about this topic. I knew it would be timely, not only because of my own family history, but because of what was being talked about, by the National Institute of Health and like I said, in the news media. And so I decided that was going to be it, that these two sisters were going to be the issue that was going to come between them was going to be the loss of their mother, where one sister was, one young lady was 6-year-old, lost her mother when her sister was born, and that I would use that death to separate them. And then the people around them who perhaps could have made it better failed these two girls. And so from very young, from, a 6-year-old to, the other daughter's birth, that they sort of had this space between them, this gap that separated them rather than brought them closer. Because, sometimes it's the people who are left behind to manage situations. If they fail, then they failed the children. Their mother was already gone, but it was the father and other people, which I won't spoil the book for you. And so there becomes this huge rift between them. And so I decided I wanted to write about that. And so when I dug into that in this story, and you meet these 3 women who all are grieving, who all need healing, who all need a stronger walk in their faith. And and through this story, they find what they need really in each other, when the one woman has, wrote letters 100 years ago, and how healing it can be for our ancestors to usher us out of dark places. They have the capacity to do that, even beyond the grave, if the stories are shared, if our families make sure that we know this story about this auntie or this grandmother or her grandfather. As we begin to share stories, I think we can find ourselves in our family history. And I feel like one thing that we can find, in particular as Black people, is we can always find resilience and strength, but we just have to look for it.
Wow. We're talking before I started recording, and you said Bittersweet is my favorite book.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I understand why.
Now I understand, right? Why. Yeah. And I remember when the book came out, the audiobook, my mother started listening to the audiobook, and I left her and I came back and she was crying. She'd only started the book a few minutes ago, and I said, "Mom, what's wrong?" And so I dedicated the book to my maternal grandmother. And so at the beginning of the book, you hear the reader of the audiobook reads the dedication before the story begins. And the dedication reads to for my maternal grandmother, Laura Wilson Kennedy, and the 3 beautiful children she gave the world. We'll see you in heaven. And my mother was crying because she had never heard her mother's name read out loud.
Oh, my. Wow. That was an emotional moment, really.
Very emotional.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I could write 50 more books, and that's always going to be my favorite.
You said it. So how do you research your books?
Wow. So research is my favorite part. I love doing research. And I'm very fortunate here I live in South Carolina, and the Midlands is sort of the middle of the state. And my books are set on the Lowcountry down south in the coast. And so it's about a 90-minute drive from where I live. And so there are lots of archives down there. There's a wonderful library that's a part of one of the universities, Avery Research Center. And I'm able to just get a lot of information through the Avery Research Center. But also when I travel down to the Lowcountry, And I always find things like I drive certain streets where I think my characters would have traveled, even Tabitha would have been, and I sort of immerse myself in the atmosphere and glean things, you know. I remember when I was writing the thing about home, I traveled and went to the Gullah Museum in Georgetown, and I just went there to look around and sort of take some pictures and get a sense of some of the Gullah art and different things, you know, because you can find things on the internet, but it's a little
Yeah.
different when you can actually put your hands on certain things. So I went down to this museum and I looked up. The owner of the museum was there. He's an elderly griot. So he starts telling me these stories. I was there for
Ooh.
4 hours, you know, listening to this man talk about their history and the culture. And so, you know, I always feel like God gives me what I need for my books. And so, but I love doing research. I love interviewing real people. And then I also love like just sitting and going through the archives in a good library. And one of the things that I found while I was writing Bitter and Sweet that I stumbled upon accidentally was years ago, back in 1910, we have an organization here in the US called the YWCA. It's Young Women's Christian Ministries Association. And it's like really sort of like a gym, physical education. People used to go there for swimming, and you take your kids there to sports and different things like that. But many
Yeah.
years ago, it was basically, when I say many years ago, 100 years ago, the Y was someplace that people often would rent rooms. They would come, there were showers, they would rent a room and they would stay there. And so I discovered while I was doing research for Bitter and Sweet, just literally stumbled upon this charter for what was called the colored, because that was the word back then, not black, the colored women's YWCA. They were segregated, of course, because our history in the U.S. was segregation during Jim Crow. And so the black women had started their own chartered their own YWCA. And so what I found all of this correspondence between the secretary who worked for the YWCA, minutes from their monthly meetings, letters that they would send from the South to the YWCA in the North, seeking housing for women who wanted to migrate from the South to the North. And and letters that they would send to like a pastor asking them to bring their choir to speak, or a cook coming to teach the young ladies about cooking. And, you know, even I remember there was one letter that was a lawyer who they had written to asking to dispute like a 50-cent bill, you know, but it was 1920, so 50 cents was a lot of money. And so when I found these letters, I just spent an afternoon reading this beautiful handwriting and these beautiful black women who were just working so hard to try to help these young women. And I was like, well, I'm putting this in this book. So, you know, you'll read the book where you'll find the place where the YWCA is mentioned. And so I think that I love the research. And so when I find the history, I try to see where I might be able to fit it in. You can't, you know, when you write a story, when you're writing fiction, people don't sign up for fiction to be taught something. Now, we all love to learn something from a novel, but largely when you read a novel, you want to be entertained, right? So you have to be careful to balance the history with the entertainment value of a story. You don't want to bog it down with, oh, look at all the great stuff I found, and dump it in a book. You can't do that. People won't enjoy it. And so so I'm careful to find those places, those small little places where I can include a little bit of the history. And I think when you find that place, when you read Bitter and Sweet, and you find that little nod to the colored YWCA, you say, oh, look, I see how Rhonda fit this in. And so so I love doing research. It's my favorite part. I actually have to time myself. I have to cut it off, because I'll just go into a research spiral. And so I typically give myself a couple of weeks, and after 2-3 weeks of research, boom, no more research, write the book. And then if you have to do a little research after you've written it to fill in a hole here or to make sure something makes sense, I of course allow myself to do that, but I literally have to find a day on my calendar and cut it off. Otherwise, I'll just do research and I won't be a writer.
Wow, wow, Rhonda. I'm going to be dishonest if I say this entire conversation have not been fascinating. This has been very, very, this has been a very, very wonderful and a fascinating conversation with you, really. I really enjoyed
Thank you.
everything you said, the history, the challenges, the personal stories. My gosh, this is just so beautiful listening to you. And I could go on and on and on and on and on and listen again and again because I love the way you speak. You so I guess that's you're really a good story, not just a good story writer, but a good storyteller as well. I've
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed my
Thank
conversation.
you.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, for coming. Honestly, thank you so much. So, give us details about your website, social media, for those who'd like to look you
Okay.
up.
All right. So I'm easy to find. I think I'm the most popular Rhonda McKnight on the internet. So my website is rhondamcknight.com. My Facebook and my Instagram, author Rhonda McKnight. And from my website, all of my social media links are there. And so you can just click there. You can learn more about my books. I love to interact with readers on social media. If someone gives me a comment, I always respond, like literally every single comment. So I am not an author who just posts things and disappears. My readers are important to me. I write because people want stories from me. So I respond to them. So that's how people can connect with me. I did want to say real quick just a little plug about my upcoming novel, Writer in Residence. It
Yeah.
comes out September 8th of this year, and it's a story, a bit about it. Guided by the quiet wisdom of an elderly Gullah Geechee woman, an author struggling with writer's block settles into a cabin in the Lowcountry where she finds the courage to explore blood-deep truths long withheld and write the story only she can tell. So that is The Writer in Residence. I'm really excited about that book as well. And so I'll say I have really enjoyed this interview, Faith. Thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. It was truly a blessing to talk to you about my work.
Yeah, same here. So, is your book a historical fiction or
It
contemporary fiction?
it is contemporary.
Okay.
There is a lot of, but there's history in it. There will always be. I think there will always be some history in my books, especially when I deal with the Gullah Geechee culture, because that the Gullah are an even bigger part in this movie, like center stage. There are several characters, and so it's not just a story about this writer. It's about her connection to the Gullah community. It's a story again about her identity. I think God has just called me to write books about women who are trying to find their purpose and their identity. And there may be a little I always have books where secrets are kept. And so, there's a DNA test, and maybe somebody finds out something about their family history that family tried to bury.
Oh, wow. Okay. If not because we're out of time, I would have, asked how this book is related to a real life event because I know there'll definitely be a story behind this story, right?
There's definitely a story behind the story.
Then what we're gonna do is say maybe when it's time, when the book is almost released, I would have you back so that we can,
Yeah,
talk more about it.
that would be great. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, beautiful then. All right, Rhonda. I appreciate, my time with you. Thank you so, so much for joining me today.
And thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. this is where I will be closing this interview. I really enjoyed this and I can't wait to read. I already have my copy, so I can't wait to start reading Bittersweet. If you haven't, please do go ahead and read. And I'm definitely going to share, to my reader friends around here, for those of us who are looking for more of, you know, black authors, black Christian fiction authors, because we know lots of black non-fiction authors. These are pastors' wives in America. so, so, so yes, we have Rhonda here, and she writes Christian fiction among others. And I'll definitely be, recommending her books more because I really enjoyed reading her book. I enjoyed reading. I've read. I think I've read some books, some books in the Bennett series too. Yes, I think I've read. I think the first
Okay.
three books. Yes, I believe I
Okay.
have. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
those were a big bestseller for me, that series.
yeah. It's a successful book. I've been, I've seen the reviews online, and I know, I believe you. So, so yeah, thank you so much everyone for listening. And if you enjoyed this, look up Rhonda McKnight, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me once again, and thank you for listening, everyone. Till I come your way again next time, I'm saying stay safe, stay blessed, and bye bye, everyone.
Step into the light where hope is found. Voices of love with a peaceful sound. The Christian reader calls to thee, oh, hope is found. Voices of love with a peaceful sound. The Christian reader calls to thee, a warp is found. Voices of love with a peaceful sound. The Christian reader calls to thee, a world of grace and harmony.